Welcome back to SwitchUp. Before we begin, just a reminder, we've got our OLED giveaway, 2 Switch OLEDs. To enter that, you just need to leave comments down below on any of our SwitchUp 12 Days of Christmas videos, or you can make purchases through our website using the 10% discount code with code SwitchUp, and you're entered into a side draw.
Now, if you've been following our 12 Days of SwitchUp series, you'll know we're on day 11, which is our subscribers' best games of 2021. So to set this video up, we put out a community post and asked everybody to pick their 3 best games of this year. The rule was simple: as long as it released on the Switch in 2021, it counted. It doesn't matter if it's been out elsewhere before, as long as it came out this year, it could go on the list. I gave each of the games 3 points for first place, 2 for second place, and 1 of course for third place, and then tallied up all of the scores. We had over 200 votes and 99 different games were voted for, and we've compiled that down to a top 10. You are seeing games 15 to 11 playing out on your screen though as we speak.
Yeah, exactly right. So as Glenn said, these are your choices, so we'll go through the best ones, and let's see what you picked.
Lovely. What came in the top 10? Let's find out. Okay, so coming in 10th place then for our subscribers this year was Bravely Default 2, which picked up 23 points. So Bravely Default came out, I believe it was about February time. Mark, you reviewed this one for us, didn't you? Yeah,
it came out in February. It was quite an interesting one actually, because you were a big fan of the series and you kind of filled me in about the game before it came out, but I didn't really have an idea about how intrinsic that Bravely system would be, that Brave or Default.
Yeah, it's a very clever system that works very well in this game, as it did in the previous games in the series. And it's a system that, for me at least, it allows this JRPG to stay very traditional, but also stand on its own at the same time.
Yeah, so you've actually gone back to that one recently, right?
I've been playing through it for the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know, about a third of the way through the game, I would say now. I love it. Very much enjoy it. I'm very happy to see it on this list.
So as you probably already know, it's an RPG that was developed by Claytek Works and it was published by Square Enix. I think it's actually the 3rd game as well in the Bravely series, right?
Yeah, you had Bravely Default, Bravely Second, and then obviously now Bravely Default 2.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back to my time there, but I believe it's set prior to the other games, and then it's got the 4 different characters.
You got your four different characters, yeah. And I'll be honest, in terms of the timeline, I'm not sure where it sits, because I think they're almost self-contained stories. There might be some references that I haven't picked up on or just can't remember off the top of my head, but for the most part, they're self-contained, I believe.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of, like most traditional RPGs, there is quite a lot of side content. There's a lot of side missions that you can go on. You'd probably be better at describing the combat mechanics than I would.
So yeah, basically you have the Bravely Default system. So you have the ability to take an extra go, or up to 4 goes at once if you are being brave, or you can default and therefore you can save your moves up and then use them later.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
But a lot of the, you mentioned that intrinsic mechanic, or those intrinsic mechanics, a lot of that comes from the job system, which whilst jobs are nothing new in JRPGs, this one is quite intimate. You can really pick it apart and take specific parts of jobs that you like and almost make your own classes.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where a lot of the nuance comes. You could quite easily miss a lot of that, right?
Yeah, you can do, and the thing is that I think if you do miss it, you could end up doing a lot of grinding, whereas you can save yourself a lot of that if you do really jump in and try to pick that part apart a bit more, you know?
Yeah, well, I remember doing the review and you said, well, have you tried to do exactly that? And then I went and did that, and it completely changed the experience.
Yeah, it's just those little tweaks sometimes. Not all the time, of course, but you can just make little tweaks to your parties, and it makes a huge difference. That's what I love about this series. Right, and in 9th place for the subscribers then, we had Mario Party Superstars, just pipping Bravely Default by 1 point, coming in with 24 points. Now, we did review this on the channel, although it was from Dave over at SaveDex, who's also been editing these videos for us, by the way. A big shout out to you, Dave. Thank you very much. I'll put a link to his channel in the top pinned comment. Please do check it out. But Mario Party Superstars was a return to form, really, for the Mario Party series. Have you played Mario Party at all, Mark?
I don't think I have. Maybe when we went to some expos and I had a little go on one of the booths there, but other than that, no.
Right, the reason I ask is because this one in particular almost goes all the way back to the start. It takes some of the best boards from the older games, going all the way back to the Nintendo 64, GameCube era, and it also takes a lot of the mini games as well. And whereas, as we've mentioned a few times with some other Nintendo properties, the series had kind of started to deviate, this one brings it back to its roots, you know?
Yes, yeah. Does it still have like those types of games where you have to like spin the sticks really fast and stuff like that?
Well, it's funny you say that actually, because did you know that Nintendo actually like got into trouble for back in the day because a lot of people's control sticks on their N64s broke because of some of those games, but they also caused quite bad injuries to the palms of people's hands. And I can't remember exactly. Again, if you know the full story, do whack it in the comment section. But Nintendo were brought to, like, there was a lawsuit brought against them, and they were obligated to provide like a glove or something, like a special handwear to anyone that had suffered an injury. But in order to get it, you had to request it. So I'm assuming not, many people didn't. So it didn't actually end up costing Nintendo much money. But the reason I bring all that up is because some of those games are in this new version, but there's a little warning now about potential injury before you play them. So just covering themselves all these years later, you know.
Exactly, especially with Joy-Con drift. How's that going to go down?
Yeah, exactly. I suppose that doesn't wreck your palm of your hand, but
no, true.
But in terms of the game though, I think it's fair to say it's the mini games where this really shines. You know, like the 5 boards are great. Maybe not really enough if we're being overly critical, but it's those 100 as it is mini games that really does bring it to life. And there are some very well loved ones that are present here, you know. So that's really what made this such a well loved entry in the series, more so than the other one on the Switch, which is Super Mario Party, which kind of enforced, your typical motion controls and things like that on people. This one is just straight, just play it the way you want to play it and have fun, you know. Yeah,
I'm going to throw in a slight red herring here. So with those, the analog, I'm still fixated on the analog stick wiggling. Do you remember the old sports games and the old Olympic games where you had to do that for like sprint races and stuff? And yeah, did you ever figure out the photograph film box like hack you could do?
No, what's that?
So like for old photo film used to come in the circular cylinder box, like the black cylinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you put your thumb inside that, and if you needed a game where you had to hit 2 buttons, you could just wiggle it in between, and you were like a beast. I used to be unstoppable, world records galore.
It's funny, I remember on certain games where you had to like keep the stick down or keep certain buttons pressed, where you used to put like elastic bands around your pad and stuff like that, for cheats that you wanted to leave on overnight and things, all these little tricks you had to learn as a gamer.
Oh man, flashbacks.
Let's move on to number 8 then. Number 8 with 26 points, this one was Monster Hunter Stories 2. Now we've mentioned this one recently in our Kids Picks video, where you mentioned that your daughter was a big fan of the demo of this, which is quite a substantial demo, isn't it? It's about 10 hours long. And I reviewed this one myself and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a turn-based game, second on the list to be a turn-based RPG, based of course on the Monster Hunter universe, but this is quite different in that it is that bit more family friendly in terms of its presentation, and the turn-based side of it works actually surprisingly well in terms of the Monster Hunter games,
Yeah, I think it's really nice when you get a good game that actually has all the characters that you love from another series, obviously the mainline Monster Hunter games, but it also does its own thing really well.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what this does, isn't it? It's I suppose it does make sense in a way, doesn't it, to take the huge beasts from Monster Hunter and kind of put them in this turn-based RPG. But the way that it deals with things like strengths and weaknesses and elemental weapons, all those things that you find in the base game, in the standard game, and puts them into the JRPG formula with the rock paper scissors type combat, things like that. It's a very well thought out game, and it does take its source material and put it into a new style almost effortlessly,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've really experienced most of this, like I say, just watching my daughter play and seeing your review.
Yeah.
But it does look lovely.
Yeah, it does. It's well worth playing, definitely. And it takes 8th place for the year. So we'll move on to 7th place now then, and we have another Nintendo game this time. We've got Super Mario 3D World and the Bowser's Fury extra content that came with it. This came in with 31 points this time. This game, I mean, I remember this coming out for the Wii U, and it was very highly regarded then. But of course the Wii U struggled, it's fair to say, and it didn't have a huge library of games, and you do wonder sometimes whether games were almost put on like a pedestal on that system because of the lack of games. And the fact this has come across and done so well, and is just so well revered on this system, which has an abundance of games and has done very well, I think maybe is a vindication. Actually, it was a fantastic game all along, you know.
I'm kind of intrigued as to why they chose to add the expansion to this port, and they haven't done it for other ones. Maybe that should be something that they think about more often, you know. Maybe that's enticed more new players, and also more players that had it before.
Yeah, I don't know the answer, obviously, but I think sometimes, like Pikmin, for example, there was some DLC that they included in the game this time round to kind of beef it up, you know, that you would have had to have bought previously. With the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, you had a new game mode, albeit it was just an easy mode added. So I suppose maybe with it being Mario, they wanted to go a bit bigger. Yeah. But also with it being a 3D game, I suppose it made sense for them to incorporate this 3D segment into that game. And it would be nice, you know, this is just me speculating, but wouldn't it be nice if this was almost a testing of the waters to see if a new Mario game in that Bowser's Fury style is a viable option?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah, it would, very much so. Because actually the two game modes are, you know, relatively different, because Mario 3D World as a game, although it is a 3D game, it is still quite linear. It's almost like a 3D 2D game, if that makes sense. Whereas Bowser's Fury, for what it is almost more of an open world experience, albeit it's quite a closed, a small hub area. But maybe it is just them, you know, just seeing what they can do with that particular idea.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt. I've just read there that it was originally planned that they were going to have it as stereoscopic 3D, but they ditched the idea when they thought they didn't really think how it would work with multiplayer. Right. Good old Nintendo.
Yeah. What can we whack in this game?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a fantastic game. Mario 3D World is a game I played on the Wii U. A very interesting game in the way it's designed because of, as I said, it's a very linear 3D game, and it does work very well. It just keeps it reined in, but it gives it that extra bit of pop that 3D allows for at the same time.
Yeah, it's brilliant for co-op as well.
Yeah, huge amounts of fun. I can see this one getting a lot of game time all across the world over Christmas, to be honest. Right, in 6th place then, and again another Nintendo first party game, we have The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. This got itself 36 points. So this is another game that was on a previous Nintendo system, not the Wii U this time, it was on the Wii. And with this one, Nintendo have kind of righted a few wrongs in terms of what that original game had to offer. Let's start with the positives though. I mean, Skyward Sword has always been seen as one of the Zelda games that has some of the best dungeon design, one of the best stories up until that point, certainly in the Zelda timeline. And it also had quite an interesting art style, kind of, I don't know, flitting between cel-shaded and hand-drawn at times, you know?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle. I mean, from a technical perspective, they've improved quite a few things, right? Like 60 FPS.
Yep, it's been bumped up to 60. Yep, HD, of course, yep. But the biggest thing they've implemented is button controls, whereas the first game made you play using motion controls. Of course, being a Wii game, it was all the rage back then. But it is almost a bit of a game changer, you know, in terms of how much it improves the experience.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm quite surprised how high up first-party re-releases are on this list. Well, I'm not surprised, but I am, you know, because I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. There's so many amazing indie games. I mean, I'm really throwing a red herring here, aren't I? Well,
I just think at the end of the day, if you're buying a Nintendo console, a lot of people are buying it for Nintendo's own games. You know, that's what they want to play. And some of these, I mean, again, I said this the other day, funnily enough, again in the kids video, is that sometimes we would see these as re-releases, which is, you know, rightfully what they are, but Skyward Sword came out, I think it was like 2011. That's 10 years ago now.
Wowzers.
A lot of people wouldn't have played this game before. You know, I think the sands of time, they just tick away, and before you know it, actually, a game's quite old, you know, relatively speaking. And there's a whole new audience that are wanting to play a Zelda game. You got Breath of the Wild, you got Link's Awakening, so you've almost got this huge open world experience. You've got a classic top-down Zelda game, or remake of a Zelda game, and then you've got what kind of used to be, before Breath of the Wild came along, you know, the new Zelda games, your Ocarina of Times and your Twilight Princess, you know, that new sort of 3D style. And we didn't have one of those on the Switch, and now we do, albeit it is a remaster of an older game.
Yeah, and actually I kind of have to eat my own words because it's the first time I played it on the Switch. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. In 5th place, we have got Dying Light, which I know is a game that you very much enjoyed, so I'm going to pass over to you in a minute. I'm just going to tell you first, it got 38 points, so just pipped Skyward Sword into 5th place.
38 points. This is more my cup of tea right here. Dying Light is awesome. I actually put this in my first person list that was the other day. Check that out if you haven't watched it already. And yeah, it's a parkour, free running, zombie, first person shooter RPG. I mean, how awesome is that?
That's a lot of genres whacked in there, isn't it?
It's just a lot of words, isn't it, really? But yeah, it's got full co-op on the Switch version. It's a survival horror in many ways as well. At night times, as you know, Glenn, when we were playing, the tone really shifts, and you're much more just trying to hide and avoid these like apex predators. Techland did a great job on the port as well. You know, I like all the nerdy stuff, and it's running well. But really, it's about the core mechanics. There's good quest lines here. There's over 100 different weapons. You can modify and create your own gear. It's just a really fun game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the night time there. It was quite funny because in the day, you're doing, as you say, your parkour and you're jumping about and stuff. And obviously, there's the zombie threat is still prevalent, and you know you're fighting them off. But then when nighttime hits and you kind of had to leave your safe zone for a mission or whatever it is, man, it gets intense, doesn't it? Like, really gets intense. I was quite surprised the difference. It is literally night and day, you know, like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal at night time.
Definitely. I remember, like, I had this really cool, was it like a guitar weapon or something, and I was just wrecking everything with it, and then it broke over a zombie's head, and I was having to like try and get along with this sad new weapon, whatever it was, and it was just, oh man, the game became tough all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think we were on a night run trying to get from one side of the map to the other. Glenn was smashing his guitar over a zombie's head, and at that exact moment, I was falling off the edge of a cliff because I backed away from a flaming zombie. Good times.
Things went bad all of a sudden, didn't they?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, really fun game. Really good game. We're going to move into 4th place now, and you're going to see the difference in points totals now from 4th all the way up to 1st. It's crazy, actually. So bearing in mind, 5th place was 38 points. With 59 points in 4th place is Eastward.
Yeah.
Now, you spoke about the indie games. Where are they? Here's one for sure. And one that, I mean, I don't know, maybe people were anticipating it, but for me, it kind of just dropped out of the sky and came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was glorious. It was just glorious. Wasn't it made by those 3 Chinese indie devs? That was Eastward, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And then published by Chucklefish, who know a good game when they see it.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
I've talked a lot about it recently, but it just, this is the hardest part of doing this, is trying to explain the intangible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is it on the face of it, and there were some people that looked at the face of it and were like, actually, it's okay. But there's more than that. You asked me, you said, oh, you know, how does it make you feel? And I said, it actually reminds me a lot of when I played Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And again, you come back to Final Fantasy VII, you look at it and you're like, well, there's nothing overly special in air quotes, but there's something intangible that is just captured by that game. And that's what I felt with Eastward. Maybe it was the relationship between Sam and John, you know, the main protagonists. Yep. Maybe it was the world, maybe it was the storytelling, or maybe it was just a combination of all of those with that lovely classic SNES styling. It just works.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that in a video the other day about this game, that it's not that necessarily has one area where it absolutely excels, but it just does everything so very well that as a whole, the whole package is just, it almost excels because of that, you know? It's more than the sum of its parts, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, I hadn't played the things that were similar to like Earthbound, and I had played Dragon Quest and obviously Final Fantasy, but it just does something of its own, and I thought it was great. I'm really looking forward to see what they do next.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's going to be quite an act to follow, isn't it?
Definitely, tough one.
Yeah. Right, let's move into third place now, and again, this points total. So with 82 points this time, yeah, we had Shin Megami Tensei 5. Now, this game, it almost become like mythical because it was announced when the Switch was revealed back in 2017. It was actually one of the games that was announced during that presentation, and then it just disappeared for years and years, you know. And it finally arrived this year, and it's as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the viewers are concerned, it's been well worth the wait. Now, Shin Megami Tensei is a series that almost gets overlooked, I feel, at times by one of its sub-series, funnily enough, being Persona. And I don't know how many people realise that actually Persona is, you know, a spin-off of Shin Megami Tensei. But I love this series. I think this series, there's something about it in terms of its setting. It kind of has that dystopian future. You have the monster aspect of it. Obviously very traditional again in terms of the turn-based RPG elements, but it has that twist of the way that you obtain your team that you go through the game with being by negotiating with the monsters that you would ordinarily fight. Just a very clever idea.
Is that something that's been with the series the whole time?
Yeah, I've played a little tiny bit of 3, and I've played 4 before this, and they both did that. So I don't know going all the way back. I'm pretty sure it did, but I just find it a very interesting mechanic. There's more to it in this one as well in terms of some of the powers that you can acquire, like the passive abilities. And you again, we mentioned it with Bravely Default, you can really kind of build your own team up exactly how you want it, you know?
Yeah, and what kind of setting is it? What's the world like?
So it's basically set in a world where demons and angels are fighting for supremacy, and humans get pulled into it. And without wanting to give too much away, you kind of switch between present day Tokyo and this kind of desert wasteland that the world has become, you know?
Yeah, it's enough to intrigue me to really want to play it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those you have to have the time to play it properly, you know, to really do it justice as a game, and for you as the customer or, you know, the gamer to get the full experience, you do have to dedicate time to it. It does actually start quite difficult because a lot of the quality of life features that you might expect to find in a JRPG from the beginning are introduced as you play.
Okay, nice.
So it does start quite tough, and you just need to get past that initial couple of hours. I'm not saying you won't enjoy it, because you absolutely will, but after those couple of hours, it really reveals its hand and becomes fantastic, you know?
Yeah. Final question then before we move on to the next one. Would this be a good place for someone to start in the series?
It does enough to explain its mechanics to you that, yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Right, number 2 then. So again, this points jump is crazy. So we're up to 104 points this time for second place. And this is a game that we both very much enjoy. This is Monster Hunter Rise.
Yes. That's good news, but I'm also sad.
Sad that it came second.
Yes.
Yeah. This is a game that came out, I think this came out in about March time. So it's nice to see that some of these fantastic games haven't been forgotten. Sometimes you find that people's memories stretch back about 3 months, and a lot of the games on the top 10 are in the last few months of the year, but that's not been the case here, which is good. Now, Monster Hunter is a series that's been around for a long time now. It started on the PlayStation 2, and it's always been relatively niche over here in the West. But in the last few iterations, and I think the 3DS actually has played a huge part in that, and that must be stated, it really has started to find its footing outside of Japan, which is fantastic news for people like us that are huge fans of the series. And then of course you had Monster Hunter World on the PlayStation 4, which played a big part further still in refining some of the older points. Now, me being an old school fan of this franchise, I didn't know how I felt about that at first, I'll be honest. But having played previous entries, having seen what they did with World and having seen what it's become in Rise, I hold my hands up. Fair enough that they knew what they were doing and they've created a fantastic experience.
Yeah. I mean, on the flip of that, there are a few things, aren't there, that still don't really click, but then they give you the option to turn them off. Things like the damage numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of having an open world to explore where you're not having to wait for areas to load as you leave one and enter the other, again, being a bit of a traditionalist, I thought, oh no, I don't like that. I quite liked having these small areas that you could pinpoint, and you would go into area 5, and you could, if you were playing in multiplayer, you could tell everyone where you were going. But after about an hour of playing in this new way, you kind of forget all that, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's made to be much quicker than the older games, which is both it's a positive and it's a negative in my opinion. I think miss the tracking. Yes, yeah. So I mean, I think maybe we've got ahead of ourselves a little bit, and we should explain what we're talking about. But yeah, the tracking in terms of obviously hunting the monsters, you used to have to create your own paintballs and throw a paintball at it and follow it around the map and stuff. A lot of that's gone now, but whilst they've made the game much more accessible and streamlined certain aspects, the core battling, the core hunting of the monsters in terms of the fighting of the monsters themselves is just as difficult and just as strategic as ever, really. Yeah, it's probably better than ever, isn't it? You got because I always used to play bow or ranged classes, and having things like the gyro, it's an absolute game changer for ranged. Yeah, and I mean it's still a series that is probably hard to get into. I'm trying to think how I would feel if I'd never played it before, and I do still think it's a game that I don't know if it does have a demo or not on the eShop. Does it? It did have, didn't it? Because they always release a big demo, but I don't know if it stays about or if they take it away once the game is released. But this, I do know that the demo they did release did a much better job of showcasing the game than previous ones had. And although it's not a game for everyone, if you are remotely intrigued with the premise, this is the time to jump in. This is the one to try, Yeah. It's definitely a good start point for anyone, isn't it? I would say so, yeah, 100%. Right, first place then. Well, we know, don't we? Well, we do, but I'm going to try and build some suspense anyway. Okay, build some suspense, because Balan Wonderworld's been waiting for this moment. Let's go. In first place for the year 2021. But listen to this. 191 points, up from 104 in second place. Mackerel. It wasn't even a competition, buddy, and it just trounced everyone. And it is, of course, Metroid Dread. Wowzers. I haven't even played it, and there's all you guys loving it. This is upsetting. So, I mean, this game kind of come out of nowhere, because all the talk was of Metroid Prime 4. Where is it? When are we going to hear more about it? And then Dread was dropped out of the sky, and not only was it dropped, but it made reference to a game that never was. Metroid Dread was meant to be a game on the DS, I believe it was, and it never came to be. And here we are in 2021 playing a version of that particular game, Well, some of us are. Well, everyone but you, basically. Seems like it. Yeah. Oh, man. But this is a classic Metroid experience. This is your 2D side-on action-adventure game, Metroidvania, of course, where this time Samus must take on what are named the Emmy robots, which are tracking her, and she must survive, and she must get to her ship, which is at the very top of this planet that she's crash landed on. It's very well designed, it's quite linear. A lot of people, that didn't enjoy the game as much have mentioned that, but I don't mind that so much. I've got to be honest, I know we did talk about this a while ago, Mark, how some Metroidvanias over the years have almost evolved the genre into this 30-40 hour extravaganza, whereas that never used to be the case. They were always, relatively short, somewhere between the 8 to 12 hour mark, and this goes very much back to that. So it is quite linear, but I do feel it feels very natural in your progression.
You know, I didn't feel like I was being pushed along a path. You know, I still felt like I was exploring, but I was exploring in a way where I wasn't aimlessly wandering for hours at a time.
Yeah, well, while you're talking, I've been looking at some information about the game, and I know you like interesting facts. So here's an interesting fact for you. The Metroid producer, Yoshio Sakamoto, conceived Metroid Dread as a Nintendo DS sequel to Metroid Fusion, the 2002 game. And it came from the concept of having Samus followed by dread of an unfamiliar planet. So there you go.
Yes, yeah, so basically the concept we ended up getting, because in Fusion, you're stalked by almost like a replicant of yourself called the SAX.
Okay.
And it kind of takes that idea on another step with the Emmy robots this time round.
I need to play this game. It's like torture.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Very much enjoyed my time with it. I can very much see why it's number one. Is it going to be number one for our list though tomorrow? That is the big question.
That is the question.
It's going to be quite interesting to see how this list compares to ours. I want to, obviously I know the answer. I'm saying like I don't know, but to reveal how many of these games transfer over onto our list will be quite interesting.
Exactly right. Well, there you go then. So yeah, stick around till tomorrow to see that final list. I hope you guys have really enjoyed the 12 days of Switch Up. I know we have, haven't we, Glenn? Although it's a bit tiring.
Yeah, it's been pretty grueling getting it all done. And as I mentioned earlier, a big thank you to Dave over at SaveDex for his help. He's helped edit some of this together. It just wouldn't have been possible to get it all done in time without that. So thank you very much. Please do go out and check out some of his content. Subscribe while you're over there. That would be very much appreciated. It would be a nice way of us saying thank you via yourselves. That would be lovely.
Exactly right, yeah. So only other thing is, remember, we do still have our competition to win 2 Nintendo Switch OLED White editions. All you need to do is leave comments on the 12 days of Switch Up videos. You don't have to do anything fancy. There is a side draw if you buy anything saving 10% using our code SwitchUp over at www.switchup.gg. You can get like eShop vouchers and bits and bobs. Then you're entered into a side draw, and those will all be announced on Christmas Day. So there you go.
Lovely, yeah. So good luck to everybody with that. What a nice Christmas present that would be.
Oh man, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, a quick thank you to our patrons, as always, for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. I hope you enjoyed it. Did it match up to the games that you picked as your top 3? Let us know in the comments section. And until tomorrow, when you'll see our list, happy gaming.